My boyfriend made fun of my boring dad's guitar skills until dad pulled out his old guitar and played like a rock god because he gave up 3 platinum albums to raise me. So Kyle started a social media war to destroy our entire family using my stolen diary and screenshots until we both got restraining orders and had to switch schools. After I found out he'd been planning to target me from the start because military and law enforcement families were his thing. My dad has always been the definition of boring. Khakis every day, same haircut since 1995, drives a beige minivan that smells like old coffee. When my boyfriend Kyle asked to come over for dinner last month, I almost said no. Kyle was everything my dad wasn't. Starting quarterback, played guitar in a band, had that confidence that made other guys move out of his way in the hallways. "Your dad seems nice," Kyle said when we pulled up to our suburban house. I could tell he was already judging the lawn gnomes my mom collects. Dinner started fine. Dad asked Kyle about school and football. Mom served her famous pot roast. Then Kyle noticed the old piano in the corner of our living room and everything went downhill fast. "You guys play?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Nobody touched that thing except the cat." "Not really," Dad said quietly. He was cutting his pot roast into perfect little squares like he always did. Kyle grinned and I knew that look. It was the same one he got before destroying someone on the field. "Yeah," I figured. "You don't really look like the artistic type, Mr. Peelser." No offense. I kicked him under the table but he kept going. "I mean, some people have it and some people just." He gestured vaguely at my dad's polo shirt. "Some people do taxes." "Kyle," I hissed. But part of me was embarrassed too. Why couldn't my dad be cooler? Why did he have to wear transition lenses? Mom shot me a look across the table that made my stomach drop. There was something in her eyes I'd never seen before. When I opened my mouth to change the subject, she reached over and pinched my elbow. Not hard but firm enough to mean sit still and be quiet. Kyle was on a roll now. "Actually, I've got my guitar in the car. I could show you what real music sounds like. Might blow your mind, Mr. P double quote." Dad just kept eating his perfect little squares. "That's not necessary." "No, seriously, I insist." Kyle was already standing up. "Emma's always talking about how you guys don't get music. Maybe I can educate you a little." I wanted to die. I never said that. Well, okay, maybe I mentioned once that my parents only listened to NPR, but that was different. Kyle came back with his guitar case and his amp. He set up right there in our dining room like it was his personal stage. "This is called Thunderstruck," he announced. What came out of his amp was definitely not Thunderstruck. It was noise. Bad noise. He was hammering on the strings like they owed him money. Pretty sick, right? He transitioned into what I think was supposed to be Sweet Child of Mine but sounded more like a cat in a blender. Bet you've never heard anything like this in suburbia. This is what separates the real musicians from the wannabes. I started to stand up to stop this train wreck but Mom's hand clamped down on my wrist. She shook her head once. Dad hadn't moved. He was still looking at his plate. Kyle cranked his amp louder. "Come on, P-Dog, don't be shy. I know you're dying to try. Here." He actually walked over and tried to shove the guitar at my dad. "Show me what you got. Play Riptide or something." That's when Dad finally looked up. His eyes were different, focused in a way I'd never seen. "You done?" Kyle laughed. "What? Did I hurt your feelings? Sorry man, but this is the real world. Some of us are built for greatness and some of us..." He then looked Dad up and down. "Some of us are built for data entry." Mom stood up and walked to the hall closet. I heard her moving things around. She came back carrying a guitar case I'd never seen before. It was worn and covered in stickers I couldn't quite read. "Sarah," Dad said softly. "Don't play," she said simply, opening the case. Inside was a black guitar that looked like it had been through a war. She handed it to Dad like she was passing him a loaded weapon. I watched my boring accountant father plug into Kyle's amp. He adjusted the settings without looking. His shoulders went back. His fingers found positions on the neck like they belonged there. What came out of that amp made Kyle's playing sound like a preschooler with a kazoo. Dad's fingers moved so fast they blurred. The sound was massive and perfect and absolutely terrifying. He played for maybe 2 minutes. Complex runs and solos I'd heard on classic rock stations but never imagined could come from a Nat college fund, Dad said, still playing, didn't come from accounting. 3 platinum albums in the 90s, toured with legends, gave it all up the day you were born because being your dad mattered more than being famous. Kyle practically ran out of our house. I sat there staring at this stranger wearing my father's face. Mom squeezed my shoulder. "Now you know," she whispered. I didn't know it at the time, but my dad's comments had hurt Kyle, and he was ready to use them to destroy our entire family. I watched Kyle's taillights disappear down our quiet street while Dad stood in the doorway, still holding that battle-worn guitar. His hands trembled slightly as he unplugged from the amp and carefully placed the instrument back in its case. The stickers I couldn't read earlier became clearer in the porch light. Backstage passes from venues I'd only heard about in documentaries. Mom started clearing the table, stacking plates with more force than necessary. Dad moved to help her, but she waved him off. The silence in our dining room felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I sat frozen in my chair, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. My boring father, the man who color-coded his sock drawer, had just played guitar like a rock god. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Kyle appeared on the screen, just 3 words that made my stomach drop. I grabbed my phone and ran upstairs to my room, taking the steps 2 at a time. Through my bedroom window, I watched Dad walk out to the garage. He stood there for a long moment before going inside and closing the door behind him. The next morning arrived too quickly. I came downstairs to find Dad at the breakfast table in his usual khakis and polo shirt, reading the newspaper like nothing had happened. Mom poured orange juice without making eye contact with either of us. The guitar case was nowhere to be seen. At school, I spotted Kyle's car in the parking lot, but he wasn't at his usual spot by the trophy case. I checked my phone and saw he'd posted something on Instagram. My heart sank as I watched the view count climb in real time. The post showed our minivan with a caption that made my cheeks burn. Comments were already pouring in from our classmates. I found Kyle at his locker surrounded by his football buddies. When he saw me approaching, he raised his voice loud enough for everyone in the hallway to hear his accusations about my family. The crowd grew larger as he continued his performance. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. Before I could stop myself, I pushed through the circle of students and shoved him hard against the lockers. The hallway erupted in whispers. Someone mentioned my grandfather's funeral from 2 years ago, bringing up memories I'd tried to bury. Kyle straightened his Letterman jacket and smirked at me like he'd won something. The bell rang and the crowd dispersed, leaving us facing each other in the emptying hallway. Jess found me in the bathroom during second period, my hands still shaking as I splashed cold water on my face. She bit her lip and admitted she needed something from Kyle's father for her scholarship application. The coach had connections at her dream school. She looked miserable as she explained her dilemma, torn between loyalty to me and her future. I told her I understood, even though it felt like another betrayal. Kyle had texted me during her confession, a message that made it clear he was enjoying this game. I had to make a choice, confront him publicly and risk making things worse, or help Jess with her deadline and give him more time to spread his poison. I chose Jess. While I helped her polish her scholarship essay in the library, Kyle was busy screenshotting our old text conversations. By lunch, he'd posted carefully selected messages where I'd vented about my parents during normal teenage frustration. Out of context, they looked terrible. 3 separate disasters hit me during 6th period. First, a notification that Kyle's Instagram story about Dad had been reshared by half the school. Second, an email from my college interviewer mentioning she was Kyle's aunt and looked forward to meeting me next week. Third, a text from Mom saying her book club friends were asking about a video their kids had seen. After school, I stopped by Dad's office to bring him lunch Mom had forgotten to pack. I took a selfie with him without thinking. My location service is still on. Within minutes, Kyle's friends were commenting that they recognized the building. I deleted the post, but screenshots were already circulating. The next day brought unexpected drama. During lunch, I made an offhand comment about Kyle's father's drinking when someone asked why we broke up. Kyle, sitting 3 tables away, suddenly went pale and started hyperventilating. The cafeteria went silent as he clutched his chest, genuinely struggling to breathe. Teachers rushed over while students filmed with their phones. By the time the nurse arrived, sympathy had shifted entirely to Kyle. At home that evening, my younger brother wouldn't stop talking about how cool Kyle was for helping him with football tryouts last month. He didn't understand why I was being so mean to someone who'd been nothing but nice to him. Mom and Dad exchanged worried looks across the dinner table. 2 days later, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Kyle had left his backpack in my car after practice, and through the clear front pocket, I could see my diary, the one I thought I'd lost weeks ago. Pages of my private thoughts were visible, including entries about Dad. Taking it back would technically be theft, and Kyle would know I'd gone through his things. I'm really curious about why the mom knew exactly where that guitar case was hidden, and why she pushed for this reveal when the dad clearly didn't want it. There's something interesting about how prepared she seemed for this moment, like she'd been waiting for the right time to show Emma the truth. I decided to document evidence instead. The next morning, I arrived at school early and tried to photograph Kyle's locker combination as he opened it. The school counselor caught me with my phone out, crouched suspiciously near the lockers. She documented the incident as concerning behavior and asked if I wanted to talk about what was going on. Kyle's mother called our house that evening. Dad answered, and I heard him explain that yes, he'd been handling her tax documents for her divorce proceedings. She needed 3 years of files that only he had access to. The conversation was professional, but I could hear the tension in Dad's voice. Mom's sister called the next day, reminding everyone about my behavior after grandfather's death. She meant well, but her words stung. The comparison to my current situation with Kyle felt unfair, but uncomfortably accurate. I'd accused people of things then too, convinced I was right when grief had actually been clouding my judgment. The school group chat became a minefield. Kyle had mastered the art of taking my messages out of context, adding concerned emojis that made him look like the worried ex-boyfriend. My attempts to defend myself only made me look more unstable. 3 different teachers pulled me aside after Kyle reported my Instagram activity as cyberbullying. Everything got worse when I realized Kyle still had access to our family Spotify account. He started playing Dad's old songs at parties, making jokes about finding them on streaming services. His commentary about Dad abandoning fame for suburbia spread through our social circles like wildfire. 3 consecutive nights without sleep left me exhausted. I dozed off in chemistry, history, and English, my head hitting the desk each time. Teachers started comparing notes in the faculty lounge. The school nurse called me in to ask if everything was okay at home, her questions dancing around substance abuse concerns. Jess officially withdrew her support after her boyfriend threatened to break up with her over the drama. She hugged me in the parking lot, tears streaming down her face as she apologized. She loved me but couldn't lose him over this. I told her I understood, even though losing my best friend felt like another piece of my world crumbling. The situation reached a new low when someone showed Mom a Facebook thread from the local moms group. They were discussing the unstable Pilser girl, who was harassing the star quarterback. Mom's friend had screenshotted the conversation, thinking we should know what people were saying. Mom's face went pale as she read comment after comment from women she knew from PTA meetings and neighborhood barbecues. Kyle's next move was particularly cruel. He claimed I'd accidentally left my diary at his house during a study session. His nervous fumbling with dates when questioned by mutual friends accidentally matched up with when we'd actually studied together for finals. The lie was perfect because it contained just enough truth to be believable. My college counselor called me into her office to discuss my applications. She mentioned, almost apologetically, that Kyle's father was an influential alumnus at my dream school. His recommendation could make a real difference for students from our area. The implied threat was clear without her having to say it outright. I thought I'd finally caught Kyle in a lie when I proved he wasn't at football practice the previous Tuesday like he'd claimed, but revealing this information meant admitting I'd skipped SAT prep to verify his whereabouts. The attendance records damned us both equally. When I smiled with relief at exposing even this small lie, the yearbook photographer captured the moment. Out of context, it looked like I was celebrating someone else's pain. That evening, Kyle sent a text that summed up our situation perfectly. We were locked in mutual destruction, neither able to back down without losing everything. The war between us had taken on a life of its own, fueled by pride and pain and the inability to admit we were both wrong. Kyle's new girlfriend from the swim team started wearing Dad's old band merchandise to practice. She quoted lyrics from his songs during team dinners, always with a knowing smirk in my direction. The worst part was watching her post photos of herself and Kyle at local music venues, tagging them with references to Dad's abandoned career. My teammates began choosing sides, and morning practices became exercises in avoiding confrontation. The college interview arrived faster than expected. Kyle and I sat in the same waiting room, our family's intertwined history hanging between us like a toxic cloud. We gave completely contradictory accounts of our relationship to the interviewer, who happened to be friends with both our mothers. Her confused expression as she tried to reconcile our stories made it clear that neither of us would benefit from this meeting. My phone lit up with a notification that made my hands shake. Kyle had submitted his college essay to the school's online showcase, and mutual friends were already sharing it. The essay painted me as an emotionally manipulative girlfriend who had hidden her perfect family behind lies. The worst part was finding my own words embedded in his narrative. Texts where I'd called Dad pathetic during a particularly bad day, stripped of all context and presented as evidence of my cruelty. At dinner, my younger brother started asking uncomfortable questions. He mentioned things Kyle had told him during those football sessions, wondering aloud why I'd made Dad quit music. The accusation hung in the air while Mom set down her fork with deliberate precision. Dad's jaw tightened, but he continued eating in silence. My brother's innocent repetition of Kyle's poison was more effective than any direct attack. The next morning brought another revelation. A neighbor mentioned seeing the Ring doorbell footage from our confrontation at Kyle's locker. The video clearly showed me as the aggressor, shoving first while Kyle simply stood there. The detail I'd conveniently omitted in my version of events now existed as digital proof of my instability. The school administration requested a meeting to discuss my pattern of aggressive behavior, affecting Kyle's athletic performance. I discovered Kyle had been screen recording Dad's guitar performance from that night. The TikTok clips he posted were edited to make it look fake, with comments flooding in calling it staged or lip-synced. Dad's genuine moment of revelation had been twisted into another lie, another piece of evidence that our family was built on deception. My attempt to access Kyle's Google Drive through our old shared folders succeeded briefly. His college essay drafts revealed calculated planning, multiple versions crafted to destroy my credibility. But my relief at finding evidence was short-lived when I realized he'd see the access logs. Sure enough, the next day brought a new post about my stalking behavior. The school counselor's mandatory sessions became part of my permanent record after concerns about self-harm surfaced. Someone had reported seeing me with scratches on my arms, marks from our cat that suddenly took on sinister meaning in the context of my deteriorating mental state. Each session meant more documentation, more evidence of instability that Kyle could reference. I tried recording Kyle's threats during a chance encounter by the trophy case. My phone was hidden in my pocket, capturing audio as he leaned close and whispered his plans to destroy my family's reputation. But the reflection in the trophy case glass gave me away. He spotted the recording screen and stepped back with mock surprise, loudly asking why I was secretly recording him. Another public relations victory for Kyle, another mark against my credibility. Mom's carpool schedule created a special kind of torture. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Kyle picked up my brother while I watched from the kitchen window. They'd laugh and talk about football, my brother lighting up in ways he never did around me anymore. Mom pretended not to notice my clenched fists as Kyle's car pulled away with my brother in the passenger seat. The band teacher who might have vouched for Dad's musical legitimacy suddenly became unavailable. An anonymous complaint about his inappropriate interest in student relationships had surfaced, threatening his tenure. He made it clear through careful words that he couldn't risk his career by getting involved in our drama, another potential ally neutralized by the expanding web of destruction. Kyle's latest social media campaign involved posting throwback photos from our relationship. He wore the vintage band t-shirt I'd given him for his birthday, one of Dad's tour shirts from the 90s. The caption referenced missing better times with the Pilser family, garnering hundreds of sympathetic comments about how he'd tried so hard to fit in with our complicated household. An offer arrived through a mutual friend. Kyle would delete everything, all posts, all screenshots, all evidence, if I publicly apologized for leading him on about my family. The terms were specific. Admit that I'd lied about my boring parents to seem more relatable. Acknowledge that I'd hidden Dad's past to manipulate Kyle's feelings. My refusal was immediately reframed on social media as pride, preventing me from admitting the truth. Everything shifted when I discovered the practice schedule I'd been using to track Kyle's whereabouts was wrong. The team had changed their routine weeks ago, meaning my certainty about his location when my diary went missing crumbled. My accusations now looked like desperate attempts to frame him, my confidence becoming a liability in the court of public opinion. The attic held secrets neither Kyle nor I expected. While searching for more evidence about Dad's past, we both stumbled upon his old recording contract. The documents revealed he'd walked away from a multi-million-dollar deal the day I was born. Something feels off about how perfectly Kyle's timing works out. He just happens to have screenshots and recordings ready whenever he needs them. The way he's hitting every weak point in this family's life seems too calculated for a teenage breakup gone wrong. A handwritten note in the margin simply read, "Emma born today." Easy choice. The revelation should have vindicated my family, but Kyle spun it as more evidence of Dad's selfishness, abandoning his bandmates and their dreams for suburban mediocrity. My carefully collected screenshots of Kyle's obsessive behavior backfired when examined closely. The text showed a boyfriend asking normal questions about family, expressing genuine interest in understanding why I seemed so embarrassed by my parents. My narrative of stalking and harassment looked increasingly like projection, especially when compared to my own documented behavior. Mom faced an impossible choice when 3 therapy clients asked about the family drama they'd heard about through the community grapevine. Her professional reputation required neutrality, but her daughter needed support. She chose to limit her public involvement, offering private help while maintaining professional distance. The decision felt like another betrayal, even as I understood her reasoning. I created fake social media accounts to monitor Kyle's posts and influence the narrative. The web of deception grew as I liked and commented on posts that supported my version of events, reported content that made me look bad. The digital manipulation felt justified until I realized I was becoming exactly what Kyle accused me of being, a manipulator hiding behind false personas. A chance encounter at the grocery store let me plant seeds of doubt with Kyle's mother. I expressed concern about his stress levels, mentioned how worried I was about the pressure he was under. Her maternal instincts kicked in as I carefully crafted a narrative of 2 teenagers caught in an escalating conflict neither could escape. The conversation felt like a small victory until I saw Kyle's post about my harassment of his family members. The old iPad backup contained deleted texts I'd forgotten existed. Messages between Kyle and me from happier times, including his promises to keep family secrets and my assurances that Dad's past didn't matter. but accessing them required using our shared Apple ID before Kyle remembered to change it. The race against time added another layer of stress to my already fractured days. Kyle's father emerged as a new threat when he made his position clear. As the football coach, he controlled my brother's playing time and future prospects. The implicit threat was elegant in its simplicity. Back off or watch my brother's dreams evaporate. The choice between protecting my family's reputation and supporting my brother's aspirations created an impossible dilemma. The championship game arrived while I was across town trying to intercept Kyle's latest scheme. My brother scored the winning touchdown and Kyle was there to celebrate with him. The photos on social media showed them embracing on the field while I was notably absent. My brother's text later that night was brief but devastating in its simplicity. Kyle had shown up when I hadn't. Financial pressure mounted as I maxed out my credit card on data recovery services while Kyle dipped into his college fund for legal consultations. The economic warfare felt absurd but necessary. Both of us hemorrhaging money we couldn't afford to lose in pursuit of evidence that might not even matter. The fall festival became a battlefield when we encountered each other at the face-painting booth. Our heated exchange traumatized the children waiting in line, their parents pulling them away from our toxic energy. The public confrontation made the local Facebook groups with opinions split between those who thought I was unstable and those who believed Kyle was manipulative. My National Honor Society position evaporated after a vote on conduct unbecoming of a member. Kyle's new girlfriend was appointed as my replacement, her smile at the announcement feeling like salt in an open wound. The academic achievements I'd worked years to build crumbled in minutes. Another casualty in our war of mutual destruction. The night I slept in my car marked a new low. My parents' argument about my obsession with Kyle echoed through the house. Dad's voice raised for the first time in years. I grabbed my keys and left, spending the night in the parking lot of a 24-hour grocery store. Kyle's post the next morning about being concerned for my ex's mental health included a photo of my car in the lot taken by someone who'd recognized it. My grandmother's call came at the worst possible moment. Her tearful plea to stop destroying Dad's sacrifice hit harder than any of Kyle's attacks. She reminded me how he'd given up everything to provide a normal life. How his choice to be boring was the greatest gift he could give. Her words echoed as I realized how far I'd strayed from protecting my family to actively harming it. The investigation into Jess's mother's workplace began because of my inquiries about Kyle's alibi. Her position at the bank required absolute trust and questions about her whereabouts on specific dates raised red flags. Jess's text about her mother crying because of my actions felt like a knife between my ribs. The collateral damage kept expanding, touching lives I'd never meant to harm. Jess's parents considered separation as the stress of the investigation combined with their daughter's involvement in our drama. The stable family that had been my second home throughout childhood began fracturing because of my relentless pursuit of Kyle. Yet I couldn't stop, even knowing the cost. Dad's question came during a rare quiet moment in the garage. He asked if Kyle might just be a hurt kid lashing out, if perhaps we were both victims of our own insecurities. I couldn't immediately answer, the possibility that we were both wrong too painful to fully consider. His gentle wisdom felt like a lifeline I was too proud to grab. My public admission about lying to was meant to restore credibility through honesty. Instead, it provided more ammunition for his narrative of my instability. The truth became another weapon in his arsenal, twisted to serve his version of events. The TikTok videos I'd posted mocking our boring family dinner on the night of Kyle's visit surfaced like digital fossils. My own words from weeks before the confrontation proved I'd started this cycle of disrespect. The evidence of my initial cruelty undermined every claim of victimhood I'd made since. School lawyers sent a formal cease and desist letter after Kyle's family threatened legal action for harassment. My parents had to hire their own attorney, canceling their 25th anniversary trip to cover the retainer. The financial and emotional cost of my war with Kyle reached new heights as legal documents piled up on Dad's usually pristine desk. Kyle's revelation about his true motivations came during a mediated session at school. He admitted wanting my family to accept the real him after years of feeling inadequate next to my perfect life. His revenge stemmed from genuine hurt mixed with privileged rage at being dismissed. The complexity of his pain didn't excuse his actions but made them disturbingly human. I felt myself changing, becoming calculating in ways that frightened me. The empathetic girl who used to volunteer at animal shelters was replaced by someone who cataloged weaknesses and plotted strategic strikes. The transformation felt necessary but came at the cost of recognizing myself in the mirror. Kyle's practice schedule came to me through his younger sister, who had developed a crush on my brother. The information felt tainted by the manipulation required to obtain it. Another small betrayal in an endless chain of compromises. Each victory came with a price that made it feel more like defeat. The moment I saw Kyle crying at his parents' divorce hearing should have brought satisfaction. Instead, I felt hollow watching him break down over something I'd helped accelerate. We were both broken by this war, both victims of our own making. The small victory of proving he'd lied about something trivial felt meaningless compared to the wreckage surrounding us. Kyle's narrative about my family emotionally manipulating him with false personas gained traction as more people chose sides. The complexity of truth became irrelevant in the face of simpler stories. His version was easier to understand. Girl lies about boring family. Boy feels betrayed. Boy seeks justice. My version required too much context, too much nuance for social media consumption. Everything hinged on Dad's willingness to go public with his past. The private man who'd chosen anonymity for decades faced the prospect of exposing his history to save his daughter's reputation. The weight of asking him to sacrifice his carefully constructed privacy felt heavier than any of Kyle's attacks. My past tutoring sessions with Kyle's sister became leverage when she asked why I was being mean to her brother. Her innocent question about why I'd said he deserved better during one of our study sessions revealed how my own words could be weaponized. The private encouragement I'd offered about her brother's insecurities now served his narrative of my manipulation. Teachers began choosing sides based on which student better served their college matriculation statistics. The academic politics felt absurdly petty compared to the personal destruction, yet they mattered in practical ways. Letters of recommendation and committee positions shifted based on calculated assessments of who would ultimately prevail. The revelation about defamation law crushed my hopes for legal vindication. Proving actual malice required showing Kyle knew his statements were false, not just that they were wrong. His genuine belief in his own narrative, twisted as it was, provided legal protection I hadn't anticipated. He could believe his own lies and be protected by that belief. Dad's old manager owed him for covering rehab costs decades ago. When I reached out, he provided context about how the music industry destroyed families, how Dad's choice to leave was the sanest decision he'd seen. Kyle's dad using football playing time as leverage against her brother makes me wonder about the power dynamics here. How many adults are getting pulled into what started as teenage drama, but ongoing legal troubles prevented him from testifying publicly? Another ally neutralized by circumstances beyond our control. Evidence mounted showing Dad had turned down reunion tours 3 times to attend my recitals, games, and school events. Each rejection came with financial penalties he'd paid without complaint. The sacrifice went deeper than I'd imagined, yet Kyle spun it as evidence of Dad forcing his family to live in false poverty. The contract revealed Dad's bandmates had sued him for quitting, seeking damages for breach of contract and lost earnings. He'd paid the settlement from savings meant for other dreams, choosing family peace over financial security. The lawsuit's existence had been hidden from us, another secret Dad carried to protect our normal life. Mom's saved letters between Dad and his label showed his desperate attempts to break free from contracts that would have kept him touring during my early years. His joy at choosing family radiated from handwritten notes. Fame is temporary, Emma is forever. The evidence of his intentional choice should have ended the debate, but Kyle had already poisoned the well of public opinion. I finally understood that Dad's boring life was a deliberate choice renewed daily. Every khaki purchase, every minivan maintenance appointment, every quiet dinner at home was an active decision to prioritize family over fame. The revelation came too late to undo the damage I'd helped create in my war with Kyle. The evidence about Dad's rejected reunion tours came from an unexpected source. His former drummer reached out through social media after seeing Kyle's posts, offering documentation of the 3 separate times Dad had declined lucrative comeback opportunities. Each rejection coincided with my school events, a science fair, a dance recital, my middle school graduation. The drummer's message included contract offers Dad had turned down, each worth more than our house. I printed everything and drove to Kyle's house at dawn, parking across the street. His car sat in the driveway next to his mother's SUV. I waited until I saw movement in the kitchen window, then walked up and slipped the envelope under their door. No confrontation, no drama, just evidence. The lawsuit documents from Dad's bandmates painted an even clearer picture. I found them buried in Mom's filing cabinet, yellowed with age but still devastating. Dad had paid $47,000 from his retirement savings to settle their claims when he quit the band. The payment schedule showed monthly installments that coincided with him taking a second job doing taxes during touring season. Mom discovered me reading the papers and sat down heavily beside me. She pulled out more documents, letters from Dad to record labels begging for release from his contracts. One letter mentioned missing my first steps while on tour. Another described the guilt of performing while I had pneumonia. The final letter, dated the day after my birth, simply stated his decision was final. Kyle's overconfidence became his downfall during a school assembly. While discussing college plans with friends near an open microphone, he casually mentioned exaggerating some details about my family for effect. The entire auditorium heard his admission through the sound system. Several students recorded the moment on their phones. I received the videos within minutes but didn't post them. Instead, I saved them to a flash drive along with all the other evidence I'd collected. The urge to destroy him publicly battled with Dad's words about Kyle being just a hurt kid. My hands shook as I sealed the flash drive in an envelope. The mediation session was scheduled for the following Monday. Both families received formal notices requiring attendance. The school district wanted this resolved before it escalated further. I spent the weekend organizing evidence, creating timelines, preparing for war. But Dad's old guitar case in the corner of my room kept catching my eye, reminding me of choices and sacrifices. Sunday night, I made a decision. I took the envelope with the flash drive and wrote Kyle's name on it. Inside, I included a note explaining I had enough evidence to destroy him but was choosing not to use it. The choice wasn't about forgiveness. It was about ending the cycle. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling. The mediation room at school felt too small with both our families present. Kyle's mother sat rigid next to Mom, their decades of friendship visible in the space between them. Dad wore his usual khakis but had added a blazer. Kyle's father checked his phone repeatedly, probably monitoring football practice. The mediator, a retired judge the district brought in, reviewed the stack of complaints and evidence. Both Kyle and I looked terrible. I'd lost weight from stress, my hair thinning at the temples. Kyle's usual confidence had been replaced by nervous energy, his leg bouncing constantly under the table. Jess's family arrived halfway through, her mother's eyes red from crying. The investigation at her workplace had concluded without findings, but the stress had taken its toll. Jess wouldn't look at me, sitting close to her parents like she was trying to disappear. School representatives presented their concerns about the disruption our conflict had caused. Attendance records showed both Kyle and I had missed numerous classes. Our grades had plummeted. The counselor read from her notes about concerning behavior from both parties. When the mediator asked for our versions of events, I pulled out the envelope with Kyle's name and slid it across the table to him. His hands trembled as he opened it, finding the flash drive and note. His face went through several emotions: confusion, fear, then something like relief. Kyle's admission came haltingly. He talked about feeling like a fraud next to my seemingly perfect family, how my casual dismissal of Dad that night had triggered years of insecurity about his own worth, his parents' failing marriage, his father's drinking, the pressure to be the golden boy. It all came pouring out. I found myself sharing too, explaining how Dad's revelation had shattered my understanding of our family, how Kyle's attacks had felt like confirmation of every fear I'd had about not being worth Dad's sacrifice. The competition between us had become about proving who deserved to be loved. The restraining orders preventing contact or social media interaction. Mandatory counseling for both of us. School transfers to prevent further conflict. Kyle to the district's alternative program, me to the arts magnet school across town. The financial settlements were modest but fair. Both families would pay their own legal costs. The school would seal disciplinary records to prevent college admissions impact. Neither party could profit from the story. No book deals, no interviews, no monetized social media content about the conflict. Dad finally spoke near the end, his voice quiet but firm. He confirmed the truth about his music career, but emphasized it was his choice to leave. He looked directly at Kyle's parents, acknowledging the pain our conflict had caused their family. His words carried the weight of someone who understood sacrifice. Kyle's mother broke down, apologizing to my parents for her son's actions while admitting she'd always wondered about Dad's past. The revelation that their tax preparer had been a rock star felt surreal, but she understood why he'd chosen privacy. The normal life he'd built was its own kind of success. Community fallout was swift and divisive. The yearbook committee split their dedication page between Team Emma and Team Kyle, unable to reach consensus. Former friends chose sides based on their own family dynamics. The local Facebook groups debated parental sacrifice versus personal fulfillment for weeks. I started at the arts magnet school after winter break. The commute was longer, requiring Dad to drop me off before work. Those morning drives became our time, filled with music from his old bands and comfortable silence. He never lectured, just played songs that said everything necessary. Kyle's transfer to the alternative program meant our paths rarely crossed. Mutual friends reported he was doing better, focusing on academics rather than football. His parents' divorce finalized quietly, his mother keeping the house while his father moved to an apartment near the school. My brother struggled with the changes. Kyle had been his hero, and understanding the complexity of our conflict was beyond his years. He quit football, saying it wasn't fun anymore. Dad started teaching him guitar instead, passing on what he'd kept hidden for so long. The restraining orders made senior year logistics complicated. School events required coordination to ensure we weren't present simultaneously. Graduation seating charts looked like military strategy documents. The principal joked darkly about conflict resolution becoming her full-time job. Therapy helped, though progress was slow. Understanding how quickly love could become destruction, how insecurity could weaponize intimacy, took months to process. My therapist specialized in adolescent trauma, helping untangle the web of family loyalty and personal identity. Dad started playing guitar at home more often. Nothing dramatic, just quiet strumming after dinner or weekend jam sessions in the garage. Mom would sometimes sing along, revealing another hidden talent. The music that had been a secret became part of our family rhythm. 6 months later, at the regional college fair, I saw Kyle across the crowded gymnasium. We made eye contact briefly, a moment of recognition passing between us. Neither approached the other, but we nodded, a mutual acknowledgement of damage done and lessons learned. I walked toward the arts programs while he headed for business schools. Our paths diverged naturally, shaped by the war we'd waged but no longer defined by it. Both families bore scars from the conflict, but we were intact, changed but not broken. Dad's secret had transformed from shame to pride. His choice to be boring, to prioritize family over fame, was never about giving up dreams, it was about choosing better ones. The man in khakis who drove a minivan had taught me that love sometimes looks ordinary, but its impact is anything but. The evidence of our mutual destruction lived in sealed records and deleted social media accounts. Kyle and I had learned that intimacy could become a weapon, that knowing someone's vulnerabilities carried responsibility. We'd tested the limits of teenage cruelty and found them far too easy to reach. Our story became a cautionary tale whispered in school hallways, a reminder that even ordinary families harbor extraordinary secrets. The boring accountant who'd played guitar like a god, the quarterback who'd crumbled under perfection's weight, we were all more complex than our surfaces suggested. The college acceptance letters arrived in spring, our futures shaped by choices made in anger and pain. Different schools in different states offered fresh starts. The geographic distance felt necessary, a physical manifestation of the emotional space required to heal. Dad drove me to freshman orientation that fall, the minivan packed with dorm essentials. As we pulled onto campus, he turned off the radio and looked at me. His expression carried pride mixed with lingering concern. The face of a father who'd sacrificed fame for moments exactly like this one. I understood then that his boring life had been the most radical choice he could make, a daily decision to show up, to be present, to choose family over glory. The khakis and transition lenses were armor against a world that valued spectacle over substance. The war with Kyle had taught me that love and hate lived closer together than I'd imagined, that the people who knew us best could hurt us most. But it also showed me that choosing peace over victory, boring over brilliant, family over fame, these were the choices that defined a life worth living. Hello everyone, I want to hit 1 million subscribers by the end of the year. I know you guys hated the new voices, haha, they are gone. Please subscribe again. Please.